Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
So good morning, everybody. Well, good afternoon now. Just 1 minute past 12, and welcome to Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up. For those of you that are new to the show, what we try and do over the course of the next sort of 25, 30 minutes is look at some of the issues and challenges in the London insurance market, especially around people, culture, talent and technology, and try and unpick some of those challenges and see if we can find any solutions. What a lofty challenge that is.
We should solve it in 25 minutes.
I think it's doable. So this week it's more of a little bit of more of a relaxed show. So we don't have a guest this week. We're going to take the opportunity to kind of review some of the topics and issues that we have been talking about over the last couple of weeks, and try and look forward to some of the themes that we'd like to cover, and perhaps some of the people that we would like to see on the show over the next few weeks, as we try to over time build up a picture of what the challenges are and how we can move things forward. So Ben, I didn't tell you, but my jingle machine has stopped working. So you'd be delighted to know.
That is so disappointing.
I know.
I'm really looking forward to that.
I can tell by your face you were. You've been so impressed by the last couple of weeks, but there we are. But so you'll just have to pretend. If you're watching the replay, I'll put them on. Don't worry.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's fine. So let's get straight into it then. So news of the week. So news of the week that we saw this week was from Lloyd's. The Lloyd's launches the API to enhance electronic placements, and I was very excited about this. And it's great to see that they're embracing technology and moving things forward. But what I thought I'd do was just have a quick look at the history of APIs. So I just thought, well, as it's new technology, we'd have a quick look. So I just quickly had a look at the first 10 years of API development, and apparently it started in 2000 with Salesforce at its conference showcasing its first commercially viable API, and then that was quickly followed by eBay, again a commercial sort of application there. Then we looked towards some of the social media, picking up on the trend of APIs. So 2004, Flickr launched. Then we got 2006, Google Maps. 2006 again, Facebook, and then Twitter as well. Then you've got the first API service provider coming online in November 2006. Foursquare, God, you remember them? 2009,
yeah.
And then Instagram, 2010. So I think the point about this is that to have a news of the week about technology that is very old, 20 years old, is just I'm not too sure what to make of it.
Do you think that means we're catching up, or we're still, the market's still 20 years behind?
Well, this is the question. You kind of wonder, what is the technology that the kids in Silicon Valley are working on now, and in 20 years time is it going to be a headline that we've got whatever it is that
I mean, I think I've worked with a few of those people. I do work with a few of those people, and I think they said they were, one of the big surprises when they started working with the London market was that there were no APIs at all in place, and they said that's just kind of unbelievable. And I think the point was that they saw this market as a, rather like, Jurassic Park. They've just discovered this land of, effectively dinosaurs wandering around. And APIs was like, that's what kind of symbolized it, really. And now we're sort of catching up. So, I mean, obviously it's great that we're catching up and that PPL now can be linked in to, various organizations, systems, pricing systems, I'm guessing, and quoting systems. So that'll be great. I suspect, from the announcement that that there is still some way to go on this, and that's but I'd love to know more about the substance. We should get someone on to talk about APIs, maybe.
Yes, I think.
You think it's exciting enough, though? Will that reduce our already huge global audience?
It might deplenish our reach slightly. It might be quite good to get somebody from those new technology companies to talk about that new tech that we don't know.
Yeah, well,
for we were talking just before we came on air about 5G and if you think of the history of broadband and the way that developed and what it enabled kids or organizations to do, when 5G comes along, that's just going to blow the game again. And you're kind of wondering, well, where is insurance going to fit? As tectonic plates of industry, commerce, social media shift again. And
I suppose once you're in the game, then you're going to have to run very quickly to keep up, and you can't any longer claim that we're still struggling with legacy and all this sort of stuff. It rather builds the expectation, doesn't it? So I expect that's one of the things that the insurance industry is going to have to really wrestle with as it goes forward, as it becomes more sort of mainstream and less sort of anachronistic, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we should call it APIs. Why should anyone care? That's the headline.
Special webinar. Yeah. Just 3-4 hours long.
Yeah. Shout out to anybody who wants to be a guest on that one.
Yeah. Right. Let's move things on. So, Ben, have you got a stat of the week?
Yes, I have. I don't know if you've got that chart, Jeremy. I think we've got to focus on this, where there is now increasingly consensus. Bloomberg's just done an article to show the potential losses, pandemic losses for the industry. So they've and others have come out with this $220 billion figure, which is a double whammy, really, of losses from the various policies that are triggered, but also the investment losses as a result to the industry. So this is this article quotes brokers, CEOs, various people around the industry. So it's gradually coming together that this is going to be a huge loss. And this is, we've now got the protests in the US, which will be quite costly, apparently. And then we still haven't, there will be still a very sort of ugly battle over the BI claims going forward. So, this is going to be pretty costly, and obviously rates are hardening, which will counter that to some extent. But I guess it's a moment in time where the industry is, fairly precarious, perhaps, and fairly unsure of the future. Yeah. Sobering.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so let's get onto the kind of theme that we're looking at this week, which is kind of, as I touched on at the beginning, kind of operational challenges and the leading with the API story. And also, I had the privilege of hosting a webinar this week with Simon Sykes of Capita, Damien Arnold of Artificial, and Toby Ducker, who's Chief Operating Officer at Axis Capital, and Tuno Sakori, who's Head of Operations at Brit. And we were talking about digital transformation in the London market and trying to unpick some of the practical challenges that needed to be overcome, and then look forward to how you might solve that to build a vision where we have a much more digitally enabled marketplace. And so the first half of the session was really kind of looking at what the challenges were, and I ran a couple of polls which I will share with you because I think they are quite interesting. So this was the first poll that we ran with the audience. So is your organization more or less likely to embrace digital transformation following the crisis? And this is really positive because everybody, bar a few, said they were more likely to be open to transformation. And I think this chimes with the research that I've been doing for the various events, that all organizations across the board are seeing the the way that they have moved in the last 8 or 9 weeks to working at home and what the art of the possible is, and they are now looking to really carry that transformation forward with the customer and the customer experience front and center. So I think that's really encouraging. Does that chime with you as well, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, at one level you can say it's no great shock that people are going to be saying this, but I think those numbers are pretty, definitive, and sentiment is everything. So I'd take it, if I was talking to a client about this, I'd say you probably better make sure you're getting on with this, because I think your talent might expect it. If you're not doing it, I might move to somewhere that is. So it's a theme that we're going to be talking about a bit later, which is competition, really. I think it's the sort of thing that once you've got that expectation there, then you can't predict exactly how it will all work through, but it is going to be it's not going to go away. It's not going to go backwards. Yeah,
absolutely. So the second poll that I ran, which was again looking at some of the challenges. So what is the main obstacle to digital transformation in your organization? So not the market, but individual firms. And I think what's quite interesting about this is that the highly rated sort of lack of legacy technology and legacy thinking and culture being at the center of that. And I think what came out quite strongly from the webinar is that the technology to do any of the things that have been talked about and we've talked about in the past is there. It's sitting there. Where the blockers are is this kind of within organizations within the market. There is either leadership or cultural barriers that need to be overcome. And I'm sure that resonates with some of the stuff.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, I've been talking about what the London market has basically is not just a sort of technological opportunity and change. It's, as we talked about at the beginning with APIs and so on, it's way behind, many other parts of the world. So this isn't just about, oh, hey, it's nice to have some technology and we could do more with it. This is a real blocker. It's a costly problem for the industry. And it's, I was talking this week to some Americans, about the views of, say, retail agents in the US, and they said that, nearly all these retail agents see London as, expensive and difficult and complicated. And therefore that's, and the E&S market at the moment is pretty kind of hot, according to various sources. So for business coming into London, this is a big issue. And I think the interesting thing here is the two aspects. One is the kind of hardware, the legacy, the actual technology itself. But the other, which is perhaps the most difficult one, is the thinking, is what's in the minds and the perceptions of people around this. And, this was brought up in London Matters when we talked about it, but that is a massive issue, I think, if people don't really understand, work through. I definitely think that obviously through COVID, people have got a bit more used to using technology, but we really need to understand a lot more about how we're thinking, what we are going to be embracing going forward, and then for the leadership of these businesses to be able to know what that transformation looks like. So yeah, it's really interesting, actually, that poll, I think.
Yeah, it was good. And I've actually got a clip.
Brilliant questions by you as well, obviously, Jeremy. I have to say that as a researcher, they're so good.
Well, actually, what I did, I asked the audience what they would like the panel to talk about.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's great. That's management consultancy at its best. So, yeah.
So let me just play this clip, because I think it leads quite nicely into some of the stuff we're going to talk around competition.
An interesting thing for me is we are entering a hard insurance market at the moment. Post-COVID, rates are significantly increasing. And one of the things that happens then that I find is that management will be distracted by underwriting, and actually some of the sort of drive which has been focused over the last few years in terms of reducing our operating costs might diminish, because there's sort of like superior underwriting returns available again. And management intention, or senior management intention, will be focused on like getting underwriter profits in rather than actually sometimes looking at the operations. So there's a sort of a situation analysis as well at the moment.
So that's quite interesting. Just saying that from Simon Sykes there at Capita, just saying that as we enter a hard market, there is the potential for us to take our eye off the ball in terms of transformation. And if the burning platform for change that we've seen through the COVID crisis is taken away from us because we're getting enhanced underwriting performance, there may be a tendency for this to slip off the radar again, and people slip back into their old ways and plow everything into front end underwriting.
I mean, I think he's spot on, Jeremy. I think his points are well made. I mean, I've heard them before. I think a lot of leaders I've spoken to have said that, we didn't fix the roof when the sun was shining. I think it's also, it's a risk averse industry. It's tends to inertia and not changing things if things are going okay financially, and it doesn't always have that long-term vision. But there's competition, and it will. That's what my hope is. Do you want to? I mean, actually, you could just show that brand chart, actually, Jeremy, that we talked about earlier on, and I just wanted to preface the next clip with a bit of stuff that we've done around brands and we've been looking at for years. So this chart shows analysis of brokers' views of or perceptions of insurers, brands in the market, and we basically work this model of personality characteristics, because research has shown that people tend to view businesses as personalities, and these are the 4 key characteristics, if you like, that they use when thinking about companies. So innovative, honest, prestigious, and powerful. What we've seen over the years, just to make the simple point that if people think there aren't brands out there and they don't represent anything, then they do actually. Insurers' brands do resonate with brokers and obviously with customers. So what we've seen is, as businesses have started to change, and largely through consolidation, many of them have moved, if you like, out of the Lloyd's space, where they were kind of small and specialist, into this more global space where they're more seen as prestigious and powerful organizations. And these are just characteristic associations. So one of the ones I wanted to just look at, and we're getting some early data in on honesty, which is just clearly about trust and a massive issue potentially going forward for the reputation of the whole industry. Now, essentially, it's worth saying that all insurers are largely trusted. Brokers will say that. I don't know whether consumers would think that these days, but that obviously, I've seen data that would show a very different picture. But let's just say brokers who work closely with insurers do tend to trust them. But what we're potentially seeing here in 2020 is we're seeing some quite significant drops around this honesty and trust. And that's in absolute terms. So that's right across the piece. It doesn't pick out particular players at the moment. We don't have enough data for that. But if that's carried through, then at a really critical time for the industry and its reputation, the very people who sell that, who are the experts, the brokers selling it, are losing faith in it. And behind this, some of the data is saying that, they're not getting the service, they're not getting the confidence that the businesses are there for the customers, to place the risks, which is, we can have a debate about hardening market and rates and pricing and everything else, but ultimately this is a business that has to deliver to those customers,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. So I will play the next clip. It's actually one of the closing clips for the session. It's quite long. It's about 5 minutes, but it's worth playing because I think the panelists touch on what the future for the London market, and especially Lloyd's, is going to be post crisis. So let me just tee this up, and then I will share it with. How should technology? Let me just rewind that. Get it bigger, and I'll share it now. How should technology interact with the human elements of insurance?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. A fascinating answer there. Fascinating results against that latest poll, I think. It's it's something that we've been working really hard. You know, we're a relatively new company, but coming in, and from a personal perspective, I've tried to bring some of the thinking from personal lines into the specialty market, around how we can begin to utilize technology. And I've kind of seen it very much as an enabler for the industry, and that actually we're here to try and work with firms and help solve problems. We're not here to come in and replace things. And I think the fact that the products are often quite complex, that level of human interaction, advice, discussion, and negotiation that needs to take place needs to be facilitated by technology, not replaced by technology. So what we're trying to do is make sure we get things online into a digital format so that the process can be automated as far as possible, but not to take away from what we perceive to be critical elements of human dialogue and interaction that takes place. Now, whether that happens over a digital format, whether it happens in person, what we aim to do is to provide that technology that supports the process and facilitates this discussion that we think needs to take place for these more complex lines of business.
For me, it's about the customer. So at the end of all of this is a policyholder, and then probably anything from a kind of short to medium level amount of supply chain or value chain in between, in terms of brokers, cover holders, and the rest. But it's ultimately about a policyholder, and I think we can borrow here from a lot of the advances made in the personal lines market, where they take what they call an omni-channel approach. So it's really about customer choice, how they want to access the processes, but they should be getting the similar experience, whether they go through a technology channel, a people channel, and the ability for us to swap between technology and people through process is something that certainly they've kind of made a lot of investment over the years to advance. And I think we're now going to see the same in commercial and specialty markets. So it's really about making sure that we've got great handle on the process, and that we understand where technology has a role to play, and where people do as well. Because I think to the point just made, this isn't about always replacing people, but it is about augmenting our processes with technology to take the pain away on some of the less value-add tasks, but make sure that the relationship management and the people element of it stays strong and is reinforced.
I think one of the real benefits of sort of increased use of technology in the marketplace is to improve that sort of interaction between the brokers and the underwriters. In particular, in terms of the analytics that are available to the underwriter when they're having those conversations with the brokers, they're assessing those risks, they've got their tools to hand. So it's like a richer communication and richer interaction between the two individuals when they're meeting.
Yeah, and the accessibility of that information. I mean, if you've ever watched colleagues at the box, the time taken to receive a broker, assess whatever it is that they're looking at, and turn that conversation around, it is challenging if you don't have real-time information at your fingertips at the right moment in time. So you're absolutely right. How do you inject that into the process of underwriting at Lloyd's? And again, more to the point, I think there's a very real conversation around what the purpose of the underwriting room is going forward. I mean, we've all talked about how COVID has changed our thinking. I think it is fair to say that it's also changing Lloyd's thinking about how the underwriting room will be used going forward, and therefore how the processes will adapt accordingly. Obviously, we're not expecting to see an underwriting room like we saw for the last renewal season, anytime soon. Although obviously they do have plans to start reopening from September.
So if I could just, to Toby's point, Lloyd's have definitely been rethinking what does the underwriting experience in the room feel like, and to Simon's point, and Damien around that interaction, what does technology do to help improve that interaction and the insurance experience for us here in the London market? I think for me, at the heart of this is the opportunity to simplify and standardize the process. I know very dull, boring words, but I think that's kind of a mantra. As a boring ops person, as exciting a product innovation is at Lloyd's and in the London market, and we have a great legacy and continue to have a tradition of product innovation and building and being able to service new and interesting challenges that we are presented. I would like to have to Toby's point exactly, that omni-channel approach. So the distribution comes through a plethora of different forms, but it benefits from that simple, standardized, market-wide, robust, data-first, operating model, which means that we can rely on and we can do things like, actually, I love the phrase that said, and I apologies for misquoting, but it's no longer about artificial intelligence. It's about augmented intelligence. It's making that relationship between the underwriter and the broker much richer through the right information being available in the right format at the right time. And that's why you challenge the need to have that Hewitt box in Lloyd's, or to allow underwriters, as they are today, to engage in a rich way with their brokers and not feel that, well, I'll talk to you when I see you at the coffee shop, I'll talk to you when you come to the box. None of that is valid anymore. If the last 3 months have shown us anything, it's what, and I apologize for misquoting, I think it was Microsoft who said this, it's shown us anything in the last 3 months is what the next 3 years of progress look like. We know we can do it, and the technology is available. So I say let's make that experience richer.
I think that's a great clip and worth watching all the way through, because it touches on both the challenge, the fundamental challenges that the market face, but also opens up that conversation that I think was lacking beforehand, which was about what are the purposes of these old traditional processes or environments that we find ourselves in a digital environment. And I'm really grateful for the panelists for being so open and trying to start that conversation and that debate. And I don't know, what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, there's a couple of things really that strike me really listening back to that conversation, and I've heard it twice now, and as you say, it's interesting listening back to things and thinking about them in a different light, and it's also the wonderful benefit of hindsight. It's like reviewing the old penalty decision, isn't it, in a way? But I would say that what it seems to me that they are all touching on is this idea that actually the whole insurance experience just needs to be much better ultimately for the customer. I think that all of the things they touched on in isolation are just things that need to be fixed or solved or changed in some way. But I think that what we really need to understand and have frame all these conversations is, what is the kind of purpose? What are we supposed to be delivering here? So that each time we talk about, say, the underwriter broker relationship, what is that supposed to be delivering upstream to the customer, and how is that going to happen? And I think that the industry has to deliver, I think, and that's the point now. I think it's going to be under pressure to deliver. So the point about if it steps back, that will be pretty bad for the industry. I think it will lose its relevance, I think, in many large and small businesses around the world. So I think it's there's a great quote I've heard this week actually in another article, but it's so I hope they don't mind me using it. But don't tell me you're funny, make me laugh. I think the industry, it summed up the insurance industry for me, which is it does tend to sort of be rather self-congratulatory about all sorts of things, but really its delivery, it doesn't always step up on that front, and it now has to. So what the people here are talking about, I think, is solving things that are problems, blockages, as we've talked about, but also really getting that thinking so that it is much more joined up across the whole business. And otherwise, it's not going to work, right? It's just not going to deliver. So, I think I want to see that, raise that conversation up into what does the customer ultimately get? What's the value that we deliver? And that should be an opportunity for those businesses that want to really compete and beat the competition.
Yeah, definitely. And I think at that point, we'll give a shout out to the audience, whether you're listening live or the recording. If you have any suggestions about who we could interview going forward, so we can, as Ben was saying, really unpick and unpack some of those challenges and get a view from across the market, whether it's customers, underwriters, claims, or operations, that would be great. So please do get in touch. Well, that was really good. That was that was good fun.
Yeah,
Ben.
it's good.
Enjoyed
Good.
that.
Yeah, it's nice looking back a bit, not always plowing forward, isn't it? Yeah, we'll do review. I like review week.
Yeah, we'll do review week from time to time, and hopefully we'll have some perhaps friends of the show on as well to help us review.
Yeah, we've got to find some friends first, Jeremy.
That is a point. So that brings us on to weekend activities. So as part of weekend activities, myself and Ben look at various Londonisms, and we come up with new definitions. These are based on the Lloyd's glossary of terms they've got on their website. There's one on there called gross line. Do you know what gross line is?
No, I've seen that one. I wonder what you're going to do with that.
Yeah, the point at which you go on a diet.
That was good. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I took a really simple one, laps, where cats like to sit.
Ah,
Oh, the
very
simple
good.
ones,
Very
you know. I've got
Yeah,
I found a huge glossary actually with about 3,000 terms, which I'm not going to share with you because it's my special glossary. So there's some fantastic terms in there. In fact, they don't need any translation. Actually, it's just what the hell does that mean? They're just funny in and of themselves.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, what are you up to this weekend, Ben? Anything good?
I think I'm going. It's a new phrase, bubbling. So I'm going to be. I might be bubbling with some of my family. You see what I mean?
Of course.
You get. I don't understand how it all works at all.
No, I don't understand. We'll be looking back on this show going, what are they talking about in 2 years' time?
Boris is bubbling.
Yeah, Boris is bubbling, certainly is. What am I up to? I am actually, so a shameless plug. So I'm working really hard because we've got to run TinTech as a virtual event a week on Tuesday. So actually, I'm looking forward to that. So got some good.
How many people do you reckon you'll get listening in?
We've got already 150 registered.
Yeah, it's great.
And there's only 250 places on the site.
Yeah. So with that, how many would you have in a normal conference?
For TinTech, we'd have 300 people for a normal conference. We have been. It's funny. We are getting more people at the kind of virtual events and the webinars and things like that. But I think it's a lot of people just sign up to get the recordings. So
But, it's a change, isn't it? It's a big change. Yeah.
And as we found today, it's actually quite refreshing to look back on stuff, rewatch stuff in your own time and reflect. So
yeah, it's good.
That's been excellent. Well, thanks so much, Ben. Have a nice weekend. I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, bye everyone. Cheers.
Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap up.